You're listening to the Habitology podcast with Melanie White, and I'm really excited today to introduce a wildcard guest, Jaemin Frazer. Jaemin, thanks so much for being here today.
Thanks. Am I a wildcard?
You are.
Yeah. Fun.
A little bit unexpected, out of the usual.
Great.
I've been following you for several years now. I must be like your number one stalker fan or something like that. And so instead of me introducing you with all the accolades and all of the usual stuff, I would love for you to give us, the listeners, your overview of who you are and how you make an impact, if that's okay.
Okay, yeah, sure. Well, first and foremost, I'm a writer, and that's not always how I've introduced myself. It took me a long time to come to terms with the fact that is the central organising principle of my life. It is how I do what I do in the world and how I make the biggest impact, is that I provide content that hopefully people find intelligent and thought through and useful, specifically on the subject of how to be a good human. My business is called the Insecurity Project, and I think insecurity is the thing that stops people being good humans more than anything else. I think it weakens us to the point of madness. So I've kind of doubled down on thinking intelligently about an area of life most people write off as too hard, or just, everyone's insecure, so you just do what you can. So I write about insecurity, and then I get to speak about insecurity, and then I get to coach off the back of what I've written and spoken about. I've written 5 books. I'm writing my 6th book at the moment, which I'm sure it'll be my best one. It's a culmination of my best thinking, specifically around, still on the theme of being a good human, specifically on the subject of upgrading to self-permission. So how you relate to yourself, moving away from the harsh self-discipline, which is energy against yourself, to a beautiful, restored, clean relationship with yourself, and having full permission from the best of you to go and be who you want to be in the world. So all that's required to make that upgrade is what I'm writing about at the moment.
Amazing. And I've been following your journey, of course, as you've been going through the books and seeing your ideas evolve. And I'm kind of curious as to why this topic of insecurity has been so important for you. Like, why did you start there?
It's hard to know fully. My best guess is, did it choose me? I kind of, when I uncovered a mountain of my own insecurity, that was stopping me, when I thought about writing my first book, I thought, this will be easy. I've got something to say. I went to write it, got through the first chapter of the first book and went, hang on a minute. Now I've begun a process. What if it's terrible? What if no one likes it? What if I got nothing of value to say? And so I uncovered this huge insecurity that had not been there, but got exposed because I stepped out of my comfort zone. And I just felt how debilitating it was for me, and that if I didn't resolve it, I would never amount to the person I wanted to be and who I knew I could be. So first and foremost, I had to work out, is this solvable for me? Has anyone solved this? And thankfully I discovered plenty of people had. I just couldn't see anyone had modeled how to do it. And so that was my work first to solve it for me. And then because it was so transformational and so logical in my mind, I thought, I think this could be useful for others too. And it would be kind of unkind not to share this if I found something that's been really transformational. And then my desire to be useful as a coach and to facilitate lasting change rather than behavior management, it always led me down the path of beliefs, and the beliefs that were in the way. And they were always self-limiting beliefs. And the worst of the self-limiting beliefs were always insecurity. So I just kind of went, if I'm going to be useful to the world, I'm going to have to talk about limiting beliefs. That's how I'm going to create change. And so the worst of those are insecurity. And I think if I just start there, even though my business coach said, you can't start there, you can't call yourself the Insecurity Project, you can't be that guy. Well, because people are insecure about being insecure. So I start saying, I'm going to talk about insecurity. People are like, Jaemin, righto, I'll run away because that's too confronting. And I just thought, hang on, people are insecure. So yes, it's confronting. But if I talk about it in a way that's intelligent and structured and you can listen. Like, people listen to me for years before they take any action, because it's a vulnerable subject. They want to suss me out. I'm fine with that. I'll just keep talking about insecurity for years, and then eventually you'll go, hang on a minute, I think this is a solvable problem. And I think you're certain that not only can we solve it, but we must. So, yeah, and now it feels like something bigger than me, not even about me, that feels like what I was born to do. So I'll keep doing it, even though I get bored talking about insecurity, because I talk about it so much, and I talk about it in my sleep, in my dreams. I'm always having some other conversation explaining one of the 7 essential practices for overcoming insecurity in my dreams. But yeah, I'm ruined for anything else.
And you keep showing up.
Yeah, you got to, yeah. Because people suffer greatly because they don't know that you can be free from insecurity. So
you can't just take a pill.
Well, no, you can't. I'm writing about that at the moment. Actually, I've one of the books I'm deconstructing, Paul McKenna. I don't know if you ever come across him. He's a hypnosis NLP expert in the UK. He's written a book, I Can Change Your Life in 7 Days. And so one of the things in his introduction, he says, in my world, understanding is the booby prize. So he's like, you might have been a therapist for years and dive into all the past and understanding your dysfunction. He says, no, you don't need to understand any of it. Watch this. I'll do a magic trick and you'll be free. And that's what people want. Like, people are terrified of their past. They don't want to go looking in the dark shadows of the recesses of their most embarrassing, disappointing moments. So if you can fix me without me needing to understand, I'm all ears. But my experience with hypnosis and NLP, I think they're wonderful techniques in the context of a whole change strategy. But if you don't understand why you are where you are, and then all of a sudden you find yourself different in a different space through a trick, then you don't get to keep that change. Because then the next time you face a real world challenge, you're no better place to navigate it than you were last week.
Yeah,
and then because you don't get to keep it, then you think, hang on, maybe that was just a trick of the mind and it was just imaginary. So I think you do a great disservice by short-circuiting the understanding process. So I'm all for turning the lights on, being adult, having a clean look at the structure of things and breaking through the misunderstandings that happen when you leave things unseen. Fear grows in the dark. Fear grows because it's unexamined, but if you're willing to have a look at it, it's always diminished by an intelligent look and see about what it really is.
I've got a bunch of questions. The first one is going back to something that you said right at the beginning of this conversation. You said that you were starting to write a book, you're stretching yourself out of your comfort zone, and that's when you discovered your own insecurity or shone the light on it. In your experience working with people in this area, is it that they just generally feel insecure all the time, or is it something that takes them out of their comfort zone or forces them out of their comfort zone where they suddenly go, oh, like, what's that point?
I think insecurity is very domain specific because of the nature of how insecurity is formed in the first place. By the time we're 7, we've made up our mind about who we are and what's wrong with us. Because it's so painful to be aware that there's a problem. We then build our whole life compensating and covering for that thing we think's wrong. And so people get very good at creating a persona that doesn't look like there's anything wrong.
Yeah.
So you can be very good in an area, very comfortable and very safe in a role, and you're good at it and no one knows that there's anything wrong. And then if that role gets taken from you, or you cannot operate that strategy anymore for some external reason, then all of a sudden you're thrown into chaos. And so that's often what happens for people, especially in COVID. Like, that was one of the most amazing things I noticed. External certainty was removed in all the ways people were relying on. And then all the internal uncertainty got exposed. So I saw so many people go, holy smokes, a mountain of insecurity that I didn't even know was there. I'd been relying on my predictable, safe job and my travel plans, my lifestyle, and all of it got taken from me. Now I've got nothing to find safety in outside, and I realize there's no safety inside. So yeah, that's how it shows up for people. when their world gets rocked.
And what does it feel like and it's not like I don't have ever had experience with insecurity, because I definitely have, but I'm on the day-to-day level, what's the tangible feeling of insecurity? How does it show up? How does it impact your life?
Well, it's proven defend energy, because to relax and just be you would be to be found as lacking. You wouldn't be enough. So you've got to be better than you are. You've got to be other than you are. You can't be you in this situation. You would be a problem. So that's the insecurity. I got to be what you need me to be.
Wow, it's exhausting. Constantly having.
Well, that is exhausting. Of course.
Shift. Yeah.
And that's why it's eventually insecurity left unaddressed leads to madness. That is the only word to describe what happens in the human if all your best energy is constantly being diverted to prove yourself and defend yourself, to cover and compensate. That is so exhausting and so unsustainable. Eventually it weakens your whole being to the point of madness.
It's a pretty serious consequence for not.
It is a serious consequence. And tell me I'm wrong. Have a look. Go find some elderly people who have never found a way out of their head, out of their fear. You're not having a rational conversation with these people. They are so obsessed and overwhelmed by these fears. They've eaten them alive. They've left them a shell of a human being. They're incoherent often. They tell the same stories. They project the same fears. They're irrational. It's catastrophic.
Yeah. And I guess also thinking that people might call it something else. I was thinking about the concept of playing small. What are some of the synonyms of insecurity that other people might use?
Yeah, well, the imposter syndrome is one of the labels that gets used. Not a very useful one, because it's misdirection. I've had people say I'm not insecure, but I struggle with the imposter syndrome. When you have a look at that, to be an imposter is to fear being found out as other than you really are. So the same thing, that's insecurity. And the moment you call it a syndrome, now you think it's out there happening to you, which is not true. Insecurity is your own worst opinion about yourself. But playing small, going last. So it's a generalization, and obviously, as with every generalization, they're not universally true, but more so for women than men. More women go last than men do. So insecurity for women shows up as being the servant of your family, taking care of husband and kids, and then there's no time left for you. So it's like, I exist to keep everybody else happy. I'm less important than those in my world. Yeah, playing safe, being small, not being clear about what you want, not thinking you don't want anything at all.
Having no purpose and meaning, perhaps.
Having no purpose and meaning, of course, absolutely.
And I think for older women too, that invisible woman syndrome comes up, and it sounds like that's part of it, or a consequence of giving yourself away, being the servant, being insecure, and not being clear in your identity of who you are and what you want.
It really is, and it traces back to the initial dilemma, which is I can't be me. That's the insecurity. And no one escapes, by the way. No one escapes their childhood without having some version of this. Every child starts off okay as themselves. There's no transactions in their world. They know they're not being loved because they're paying for it. They don't have to cough up any money. They don't have to perform. They don't have to behave. They're just loved and kept safe and nurtured because they're there. They're like, look at this. Turns out I'm enough. Turns out it's okay to be me. But then some horrible day, the world changes on them. Inevitably, it can't stay like that. And so now they've got to behave. Now they've got to perform. Now there are consequences. Now they've got to transact. And they're like, it turns out that I am not enough on my own. It's now me plus or minus something. And so this pivot point universally happens. I cannot be me. And so then you compensate and you develop, okay, well then I've got to be better than me or other than me. So I need to be invisible, or I need to be very showy. The extreme. Some people go into real performance mode to go, okay, well then I'll show I'm a good person by how wonderful I can be and how much I can do. Others go, I'll show I'm a good person by not making any mistakes and by never ruffling any feathers and always pleasing others. So I'll hide. So, but yeah, it's the same, two sides of the same coin.
Yeah, it's interesting. We're all so different and we can all have this same problem and perhaps think, well, I'm the only one that's got it, not realizing that everyone else is suffering with it. So interesting. And this kind of is leading into another question I wanted to ask you, because you talked earlier about, I can't remember the exact words you used, but you can't change your behavior if the underlying beliefs are still there. And it's really interesting as a trainer of health and wellness coaches, and I know that you train coaches as well. In health and wellness coaching, it's all about forming habits. And a lot of people in that profession, when they start out, are thinking, well, I'll help people to exercise and I'll help people to eat well and I'll help people to drink less alcohol or whatever it is. But that's the physical habit, the end result. And people can't be consistent with those things, or they find it hard to be consistent with those things on their own. And they do it for a while and they fall off the wagon and the coach thinks, well, gee, there's something wrong with me, but maybe there's something that they're not addressing.
Well, yeah, I have an aversion to behavior management just because I think it's stopping short in understanding what's really going on. And one of the ways I think about even the language of habit is I prefer to call them strategies.
Yeah.
So a habit is something that often people feel like happens to them. It's just, this is just a habit. I have a habit. So I'm a little powerless around my habits. Whereas if you consider that behavior is actually an attempt to meet your needs and protect your fears, and then you go, it's a strategy. It's all a strategy. You've designed strategies to cover and compensate what you think is wrong with you. And those strategies become patterns. Those strategies take over your world. So the moment you call them a strategy, though, it means, well, you're the strategizer. You're the one who created those. So you could update and change those. And if you could address the reason why you created those strategies in the first place, then you actually could make lasting change in these areas and develop strategies. And then you can call them habits. That language doesn't really matter down the track. Have patterns around health and fitness and well-being that are aligned to the person you want to be, because now it's safe to show up. Now you're not trying to prove and defend. Now you're not covering and compensating. Now it's okay to be in the light because you can't be found out. You are enough. So, okay, then it's okay to see me. If it's okay. One of the things I'm fascinated about with people in health is that if you scratch the surface, it seems on some level it's almost dangerous to be attractive. And so part of them is unhealthy by design. So they are always pulling themselves away from health because they know that health is to be in the light and health draws attention. Whereas if they're average and unhealthy, then they're back from the light a little bit and no one's looking at them. If no one's looking at them, well, no one's going to see what's wrong with them. So I love just that question. What's dangerous about being healthy? Which doesn't seem to make sense on the surface, but it's a wonderful question to help people examine the structure of how they got to where they are in the first place.
Yeah, it's such a great question. It reminds me of when I first moved here from Perth in 2007, and I made friends with a local girl and her husband who'd just moved here, and he's a chiropractor. And he said, come and I'll give you a check. And there's the questionnaire that he does. And, how do you rate your health on a scale of 1 to 10? And I think I said at the time it was a 6 because I'd been through burnout. I was pretty stressed. And he said, how would you like it to be? And I think I said 8. And then he came back and said, why'd you pick 8? Why wouldn't you want your health to be 10? And I went, oh, what a question. But it was really confronting as somebody who I'd come from a different profession and I was moving into the health sphere, and I was thinking, gee, I want to be really healthy and look after myself. And wow, why am I an 8 and not a 10?
Wow,
my desired outcome. Yeah, I was curious. What do you think, Jaemin, makes the difference between a good coach and an exceptional coach, now that we're talking about coaching?
Yeah, sure. Well, I used to resent the fact that it was not a regulated industry, and so anyone could be a coach. And so competing with, vast ranges of skill sets and experiences. But then I realized that it's actually a wonderful thing that coaching is not regulated and there's no barrier to entry, because it turns out that then no one actually cares how you know what you know. They just want to know that you know it. And they want to know that it's going to work for them when you share it. And the only way they'll be certain around that is if you're embodying what it is that you're sharing. So I think that's the only thing that separates good coaches from excellent ones, is the excellent coaches have gone all in. They're wholehearted around it. They're smoking what they're selling. They are high in their own supply. Like you look into their eyes, you hear your voice, you go, I think this is working for you. I think you are the embodiment of the things you're sharing. This is not some thing you've learned that you've never applied that then you're passing on. And I think you can do that in the other therapy models. I think as a psychologist, a therapist, a counselor, I think you can point to, well, this is what qualifies me to do what I'm doing, that certificate on the wall, and I'm part of this body, so that's why I'm saying this thing. Whereas coaches, I could point to a certificate. It's like, so what does that mean, Jaemin? That it doesn't mean anything. All that people want to know is, are you full of shit? Like, can you do what you say you can do? Does this work? And they want to see certainty and hear certainty and feel certainty. So I love thinking that coaches are in the certainty business, and the only way you'll be able to sell certainty is if you are certain, and the only way you'll be certain is if you've actually gone first and been willing to plumb the depths of your own dysfunction, your own challenge, and apply what you have as a way of setting yourself free.
Yeah, it makes so much sense. And from the client's perspective, you have greater resonance with someone that's had that lived experience. And it's interesting that even in the NDIS, if you want to work in the area of mental health as a coach, you can either have the mental health coaching Cert 4 or lived experience. And so that's saying you don't need a piece of paper, but if you have that lived experience, then you can work in the NDIS. And that's the current state of play. So it's fascinating to think that, even as you said, we're not a regulated industry, but there's almost this acceptance in some sectors that, well, you haven't had the training, but you've been on the journey, so I trust you. Yeah,
well, and that's really beautiful. I mean, I've been coaching for 15 years. So when I say that to people, sometimes they're discouraged, like, oh, does that mean until I've been doing what you've been doing for this long, then I can do it? But when I did my first intake for my diploma in life coaching, I started my business, well, day 2 of my first 3-day intensive, I called my wife and said, all right, I'm starting a coaching business. I'm going to stop being a school chaplain. I'm being a coach. And she cried, not happy tears, the other kind of tears.
Oh,
like,
God.
what am I doing? And I gave myself 4 weeks of finance from the chaplaincy job before I had to make this work. And I knew that, great, I don't know everything about coaching, clearly. I've just started learning this modality. But what the little I do know already, I am willing to be wholehearted with it. And that's what qualifies me. So I'll keep being wholehearted with every new thing that I learn, and I'll only share the things that I'm wholehearted about and the things that I've implied. If I'm hiding behind anything, or I'm like, yeah, here's a theory that I've never even tried, so maybe it'll work for you, I won't do that. And that's what gave me the confidence to go, I can make this work. And so that was day 1, with just the first bit of coaching that I learned. So you can start whenever you're ready to be wholehearted. You don't have to have years of experience, just be wholehearted.
And I guess it's, well, I don't want to make an assumption because that's not very coaching of me, but it sounds like your experience with imposter syndrome came after that.
Yeah, it really did, because it was like, I'd been a pastor for 10 years. So I was quite comfortable being in the space of one-on-one conversations with people talking about the stuff in their world. And I felt like, okay, now I've got some sharper tools to be able to facilitate some more poignant conversations. So I kind of like, yeah, this is pretty proven territory for me. So I think it'd be okay. But it was, I'm going to write a book, and I'm writing a book in a space I've not developed any credibility in. So hang on a minute, who am I again? And am I allowed to do this? And what will others think? And am I okay? And do I have enough? And so that was when I really stepped out of the safe, known, comfortable world and gone beyond anything I'd done before. That moment was like, okay, now this insecurity is uncovered.
It makes me think of the stages of learning model, you know, the unconsciously incompetent, and then you become consciously incompetent. And I guess that's the point we go,
That's exactly right.
oh,
You know what you don't know.
exposed.
Yeah,
Go back
that's
to
right.
the thing. Yeah, right. Interesting. Jaemin, I've heard it said that your mess is your message. So I guess from what you've said today, your lived experience and your personal growth has led you on this path to be supporting other people. And I believe you do exceptionally well at it. So thank you for your work, first of all, and congratulations on your success.
Well, thank you. It hasn't been easy, but
I never said that.
yeah. But it is. I pinch myself at the joy of being able to facilitate change for people, and so glad I found a way to stick at it even through the years when I was like, this isn't working, I can't do this, and to persevere and to develop my own stuff and to work through my own mess to embody that. So yeah, it's lovely to be here now. So yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you.
One other thing I've heard you say on your podcast, and I'm going to put a link to the show notes so that other people can listen to that. I've heard you say that it's best to be coached by someone that doesn't care about you. And I really love that, because I actually wonder if not caring about the other person in that sense is a measure of your own personal security as opposed to insecurity. Does that make sense?
Well, it does. And I really agree. I think that if you are insecure as a coach, then you need the other person to get good results so that you can feel good. So that's very dangerous and unkind, and it sets up the wrong frame. So I know that I'm okay. I don't need you to change for me to feel like a good person. So if I'm able just to serve you and let you be responsible for your own results, that's when I'll really be most useful. So I love coaching as I would consider it, when done well, the cleanest of all the frames, the cleanest of all the spaces, the one less likely to have an agenda. In every other frame, someone wants something from you or for you. So to be a coach is to go, your life, your problem. I'm not losing sleep over you. I don't need you to be any different than you are. I'm not rewarded by your success. I'm not punished by your failure. I'm not another person who wants you to do something you don't want to do.
Yeah.
I know how to get there. I've got these results myself. If you would want to know how, sure, I can share that, but you've got to want it, because me wanting it for you is going to be really useless and unkind, by the way. So yeah, it's something I've developed a lot, and I really think is a very important component of good coaching, is to be objective, dispassionate, and you'll do that by being secure in your own self. Neediness really undermines that frame pretty dramatically.
Coaches need to be coached.
Sure.
Jaemin, we're about on time and ready to wrap up, but I'd love to know a little bit about the next book. When's it going to be released? This is your life-changing, world-changing book on giving yourself permission, and I think it's a great topic. Love to know more about when we can get our hands on it.
If I've learned anything by the 5 previous books, is that I significantly underestimate the time and energy involved in writing it. So hard to say, but it's the number one priority. It gets the best energy at the moment, so I'm making good progress, as hard as it is. So look, it could be out by Christmas if all goes well.
Okay,
but
that sounds good.
Yeah, not too much later than that at worst. And just the mechanics and structure of what would be required to access full self-permission. I'll just give away one secret around that, and that is I hear self-permission bandied around as a term. In its worst form, it's given as a version of self-discipline, i.e. I'll just give myself permission to do the things I enjoy now. I'll give myself permission to not care what others think. It's like, hang on a minute, you are still managing yourself. You're still making yourself do the thing that you wouldn't do otherwise. You don't trust yourself. It's still compensating. And so you're still your conscious mind tricking yourself to do what you wouldn't do. So in actual fact, self-permission is granted by the unconscious, not given by the conscious. And it's granted when you satisfy the safety conditions, when you upgrade the structure of how you relate to yourself. So it's now safe for you to have permission. It's safe for you to have all your best energy, all your best resources pointed toward your success and your flourishing in the world. So then the question is, what conditions would need to be satisfied to make your world safe, to bring internal safety so that permission could be granted? So the book's about the 4 conditions that would have to be satisfied to get that to happen.
Looking forward to reading it. And even as you're talking about giving yourself permission, there's that sense of pressure around that. I must, but
Exactly right.
When you describe 4 conditions for creating safety so that you can allow permission, then I have that feeling of relief, like,
Lovely distinction. It is relief. Yeah. So handbrake comes off. Great, we're friends now. Yeah, go. It's awesome. Your world's safe. Then you got all that you need to go into the world and be who you want to be now. And then also, you're like, well, then lack of permission is also loving, because your unconscious is like, if I was to release all resources now and your world's not safe, you're going to crash and burn. So my love is to resist you, to restrict you, to thwart your plans, to sabotage, to get up in your face and block you until you make your world safe. So take these conditions seriously, make the upgrade, and then let's be friends.
That sounds amazing. And I guess then if we're waiting for your book, in the meantime, you do have your 18 core coaching models.
Well, that's my toolbox for how I do what I do in the world. And I got to do the live training a month ago, 3 weeks ago, and curating the recordings of that to be able to release that as an online training. And I'm so excited about the quality of that, because I said to the people in the room, look, the video's on, but I'm not paying attention to it. I'm not using you in the room to create content. I'm here, present, and the video is going to capture, hopefully, maybe what's going on in here. So I was willing to take the risk that it didn't work, but being able to watch the video, it's so wonderful to see that, and quite different from the first time I recorded my content 7 years ago, which was just talking head. Here's all my tools. To have them recorded in a live setting where there's interaction, the magic is real there. And so really excited about making that available shortly.
That'll be the online version. You have a live version next year as well.
That's right. Yes.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for being here today, Jaemin, and talking to us about insecurity and many other things. Do you have any parting thoughts or questions to leave the listeners, or not? Well,
so I would say insecurity gets a lot of angst. People feel really overwhelmed at the approach of it, the thought of it. But if I could frame it like this, saying overcoming insecurity is not even the main game. It's actually just a ticket to the game. So it's just adult 101. It's your most important work, is just to free yourself from the narratives, the assumptions, the accusations you've made about yourself a long time ago. And to be able to show up here with nothing to prove and nothing to defend means now you can play the game. Now you can go do your work. Now you can be the person you're always supposed to be. So I think that's a really beautiful message for the world. I think we'd all benefit, and we all do benefit, when people show up secure, and we all kind of get healed by that energy. And we're all thwarted by insecure energy. It's ugly, it detracts, it steals from us, it creates conflict and is aggressive. So insecurity, it's going to be okay. You can overcome it, and what's on the other side is really beautiful. Yeah,
better relationships, greater satisfaction, meaning and purpose.
All the things.
Yeah. Thanks again, Jaemin.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate your time. Okay. See you later.